Yaakov tells Yosef, Lech no re'eh shloim achecha, go see how your brothers are doing. He sends him to go to Shechem. The pasuk says, Vayavoy Shechem, he arrives in Shechem. Rashi says, Mokei muchal u'paroni, this was a place that was ready for all sorts of troublesome things to happen. The Rebbe will soon go and describe and discuss the things that Rashi mentions of those things happening there. But first the Rebbe asks, what was even difficult in the pasuk for which Rashi needed to explain in Pshutei Shel Mikra that Shechem is a place of trouble. So some Mefarshim want to say that since the pasuk had already said earlier, your brothers are in Shechem, all the pasuk needed to say now was that Vayavoy Shama, he came there. Why does it need to say that he came to Shechem? But the Rebbe says that it's difficult to say this, that this is what's bothering Rashi, because number one, we find a number of places that the Torah should repeat the name of a place where something is happening. Furthermore, the Rebbe says, if that's the case, Rashi should have said this already in the previous pasuk, where Yaakov says to Yosef, your brothers are in Shechem, because there was already also extra, because the pasuk had earlier already said that the brothers were in Shechem. So why doesn't Rashi say this? And finally, the Rebbe says, then Rashi should have only quoted in his Dibur HaMaskal the word Shechema rather than Vayavoy Shechema. Some Mefarshim want to say that generally these words Vayavoy Shechema seem to be unnecessary, because what difference does it even make where the following story happens? The pasuk says a man finds him and he tells your brothers are in Doison. So therefore Rashi says, since the pasuk specifically says that he came to Shechem, Rashi tells us this was a place of trouble. But the Rebbe says this also is not understood, because number one, al pi pshat, it's understood that the Torah would tell us that Yosef went to the place where Yaakov has sent him, and it's also necessary for the continuation of the story. If the man that Yosef encounters says Nasu mizeh, they traveled from here, well, we're going to want to know where is the place that Yosef is, where this is all happening, where did the brothers leave from, and where did they go? Now the Rebbe continues to the next part of Rashi. So Rashi says the troubles that happened over there is Sham Kilkalu Hashvatim. This is where the Shvatim messed up. As we'll soon see, this is in the story of Yosef. Sham Inu es Dina. This is the place where Dina was violated. Sham Nechlekam Alchus Beis David. This is the place where Yosef's kingdom was split in the times of Rechavam, Shloimo's son, where the pasuk describes how he came to Shechem, and that's where the split happened. So the Rebbe asks a number of questions. First of all, the order that Rashi goes. The story of Dina was before the story of the Shvatim messing up. Especially that Rashi's source, which is the Gemara and the Medrash, actually do put Dina first, which is the story of the order of how it happened. Number two, in those sources just mentioned, the Gemara and the Medrash, it says that in Shechem they sold Yosef. Why does Rashi say, Sham Kilkilu Hashvatim? There the Shvatim messed up. Seemingly Kilkul could be something even not so terrible, not so severe. The sale of Yosef was something very severe. Why doesn't it say that's where the brothers sold Yosef? The Rebbe asks, we also find, are there bad things that happen in Shechem, and yet Rashi does not mention them? On the other hand, there are some very, very great things that happen in Shechem. That's where Avraham Avinu was told that he's going to have children and he'll get Eretz Yisrael. That's where Yeshua made a Krisas Bris with the Yidden for fulfilling Torah. Why doesn't Rashi mention any of these other things? Says the Rebbe, first of all, regarding this idea of Sham Kilkalu Hashvatim, Rashi does not say that that's where they sold Yosef, and the Rebbe says because according to Rashi in Pshutei Shel Mikra, that's not where they sold Yosef. The pasuk says further that the man that Yosef encountered says that he heard the brothers saying, Neilcha Doison, let us go to Doison. Rashi explains, Doison means, from the word das, which means legalities or laws, that he heard the brothers saying, let's look for some ways of how we could paskin, how we could legally get rid of Yosef. Then Rashi says, according to the Pshat, Doison is a name of a place, and then Rashi adds, Ve'ein mikra yoytze midei pshutai. The pasuk always stays with its simple, literal meaning. In other words, even if we want to say that Doison means that they're looking for legalities and ways, excuses to kill Yosef, it still is also a name of a place. In other words, it contains both ideas. In other words, according to Rashi, where was the sale of Yosef? That not in Shechem, but rather in Doison. And that's why Rashi cannot say in Pshutei Shel Mikra, this is the place where they sold Yosef. So what does Rashi mean by Sham Kilkilu Hashvatim? That that's the place where the Shvatim have acted in a corrupt way or messed up in some way, etc. So to explain all of this, The Rebbe says simply the way we understand the idea of Mokim Muchel or Paranis is like saying this is a place where bad things happen. Yosef came into a place where bad things happen, and that's why something terrible happened to him over here as well. Rashi is not learning like that at all. Rashi is coming to negate this pshat. And that's why Rashi, number one, says Sham Kilkelu Ashvatim, even though it happened after the story of Dinah. Rashi is coming to emphasize the idea that the Pur'aniyus, all the troubles that we're about to speak about, that Shem is ready for, or prepared a place for trouble, is things that are specifically relevant to Yosef himself. And Rashi is coming to tell us that Yosef came to a place, to Shem, that was a place of Pur'aniyus, of problems for Yosef. And if once we understand Shem Kilkelu Ashvatim means that this is where they're going to deal with Yosef, we're going to translate the other two Pur'aniyus, we'll understand that that's also referring to things specifically related to Yosef, as we'll explain. What's forcing Rashi to say this? Rashi quotes the words Vayeshev. The pasuk starts off by saying, as mentioned before, Yaakov sends him to see his brothers in Shechem. He heads off to them, and then the pasuk concludes with the words Vayeshev. He arrives in Shechem. He comes to Shechem. Then the next pasuk starts the story how he encounters someone who says that they went to Doisan, etc. But from the words Vayeshev, it sounds like this isn't just a by the way part of the story. The pasuk could have just said, as Yosef is going, a man sees him and tells him, by the way, your brothers are in Doisan. Vayeshev makes it sound like there's something major that just happened to him. He arrived in Shechem. And this is why Rashi is saying, yes, Vayeshev is a big deal. It's a very big part of the story of the sale of Yosef. This is the place where all the troubles for Yosef are going to start. In other words, because this is the place, even though, yes, Yosef was sold in Doisan, but the beginning of the plotting happened right over here in Shechem. As we just said, that the man said to Yosef, that while they were in Shechem, I heard them saying, let's look for some ways, some legalities to kill Yosef. Says the Rebbe, this is going to tell us now that the other two Pur'aniyus that are mentioned about Dinah and Nechlek Malchus Beis David are also related specifically to Yosef. How do we understand all of this? Says the Rebbe, Rashi had already told us earlier that Yosef was punished because what happened between him and his brothers and what ended up happening to him was as a result of him accusing his brothers of various different things and telling them over to his father. He told his father that his brothers were eating Aver and Achai, parts of a living animal. He told his father that his brothers were putting down the children of Bilhah and Zilpah, calling them avodim, calling them slaves. He also told his father that they were acting in immoral and immodest ways. Rashi tells us over there that Yosef ends up suffering in all of these three things. For the idea of Aver and Achai, Vayishchatu, the brothers go ahead and they kill the goat and then claim that Yosef died. For the fact that he accused them of calling the other children avodim, Yosef himself ends up being sold as a slave. And for the idea of arayus, of immodesty, we have the whole story, what happens with Yosef and the wife of Potiphar. So since Yosef's punishment is connected with these three ideas of Aver and Achai, putting down, denigrating the children of the Shvachos, that they were called avodim by their brothers, and that accusing the brothers of being suspected on arayus, we need to say then that Shechem, which as Rashi says, he arrived in Shechem, he arrived in a place that's prepared for all sorts of trouble. It's a place that's prepared for trouble for all of these three things. And that is the fact that there was this kilkul of the Shvatim, which as we said before is they're plotting to kill Yosef, which is the idea of shvichas damim, of bloodshed. This is the preparation. This is the Shechem being a place that's prepared for the trouble that happens because of Yosef accusing them for Aver and Achai, and as a result of which they go ahead and they kill the goat and claiming that Yosef died, etc. Now, as far as the idea of Dinah being violated in that place, now the place of Shechem is a place that's muchen, that's prepared for Puranus, for the fact that Yosef accuses his brothers of being immodest, and as a result of that, again, eventually the trouble that he has from that with the wife of Potiphar, that's the result of that. And finally, the third example that Rashi brings, Nechlek Malchus Beis David, is, and that happens actually through Yeravam that comes from Yosef. Now Shechem, it's going to happen later, but Rashi is telling us that Shechem is generally a place for the kind of punishment also that happens for Yosef, accusing the brothers of putting down the Bnei HaShvachos, calling them Avodim, in a similar way. Now there's this zilzul, this denigration to Malchus Beis David. From all of this we understand now why Rashi doesn't bring any other things that happen in Shechem, neither the bad things that happen in Shechem, nor the other good things that happen in Shechem, because those are not connected in any way to Yosef, particularly in this story. As opposed to, if we want to speak as far as Klal Yisrael is concerned, then of course there's some very great things that happen in Shechem. Namely, again, the Krisas Bris that Yeshua made with the Yidden for Torah and mitzvahs, as well as the other things we mentioned before about the promises that Avraham Avinu got.